give an overview again, recap, do a recap, and then we're going to talk about Spring JDBC, Spring Transactions, Spring AOP, and Spring JPA. So Spring framework is a Java application framework, and the core idea of Spring is dependency injection, which is also known as inversion of control, but more popularly known as dependency injection. And it has other modules as well, like Spring Web Services, Spring JDBC, which we are going to talk about today. Dependency injection is a method to create needed dependencies and look them up somehow without doing it in the dependent code. So here the idea is we won't be instantiating the object. The Java code won't be instantiating the object using the new keyword, but would rather the dependency would be injected from Spring framework into the application, into the Java code. So by doing that, the advantage is your application is not tightly bound. So you are not depending upon other classes. So you don't need to look for dependencies. While writing the code, you don't need to look for the dependencies. At runtime, those will be injected into the class. And the way to do that is using either setters or two ways to inject the dependencies. One is setter injection, and the other one is constructor injection, right? So the dependency injection is a traditional push approach. So we don't want to pull. The traditional pull approach is direct instantiation using the new keyword, whereas the dependency injection will be a push approach. Something outside of the object pushes its dependencies into the application code. Now we have seen what is a Java bean and how to declare the beans in a Spring configuration file. I'm going to walk you through the demo today. Typically, a bean is like a Java bean with a unique ID. So when you define bean in the configuration, you have to give a bean tag, ID for the bean, and class name for the bean. And within the bean, if you want to set some properties, the element is property within the bean tag. Before closing the bean tag, you have to set the properties if required. The key attributes of the bean are ID, class, and if you want to inject any values, dependency injection, if you want to do the dependency injection, you can use either constructor arg values for constructor injection, arguments to pass to the constructor at creation time. And if one bean is referencing another bean, do you remember how do you use that? How to configure that in the configuration file?
ID ref.
Using the ref.
Ref, yeah, just the ref element. So that is called. You are referencing another bean within the bean. That is called collaboration. That is called collaboration of the beans. So that they both can talk to each other. The first bean would be able to call the bean methods that the bean is injected into. So you're basically getting a reference of the other class, and from your Java bean where the reference bean is injected into, you will be able to call the methods. So this is how a sample bean definition looks like: bean ID, class, and property bean, property names, and a ref bean for each one of them. So here in the example bean, you have two beans, bean 1 and bean 2, which are another beans. That's why you are using ref element here. Whereas the third element is a primitive, so you are using value tag here to set the value for the primitive variable. And this is happening through setter methods. So this we have, yeah.
In the tag property and ref, I think reference, won't it be inside the property tag itself?
You can do both ways. Okay. You can either close the property bean and then start another tag, ref tag.
Okay.
It can be both ways. But the way you are injecting here is through setter methods. So this is called setter injection. And
the same thing for value too, right? Value can be included inside too.
That's right. Same thing for value also.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. First you need to get a bean from the. So once you define the bean in the configuration file, you need to obtain the bean from the configuration file. So for that, you need to create a. You need to load the configuration file using class path XML application context. And once you load the bean definitions, you can obtain the bean. So bean factory, the bean factory creates the beans at the startup of the Spring, but you will not use the bean factory directly. Application context is a superset of the bean factory methods. So most of the time you will use one of the types of application context. Application context can be various types. One of them is class path XML application context. Or if the source is a file, then it will be a file path XML application context, something like that. I will show you today when I walk you through how to set up Spring and how to load the configuration file. I will show you the usage of class path XML application context. So Spring uses bean factory to create, manage, and locate beans, which are basically instances of class. Beans are created in the order they are defined in the configuration file. So they are created in the order based on the dependency graph. Once they are created, often they are created and the factory loads the definitions. But we can also do a lazy initialization for the beans. Suppose if there are too many beans that need to be loaded at the startup of the application and all of them are not required, we can ask them. We can mention in the configuration to lazily load the beans using lazy init equal to true. All right. So those beans will get instantiated only upon the first request. They are not loaded when the application starts up. Okay.
Okay.
So bean ID is not mandatory, but if you have not provided the ID element, what happens is that becomes an anonymous bean. You will not be able to use that bean as a reference to another bean. That's perfectly valid, but you will not be able to use that as a ref bean to in another bean.
We generally use it for inner beans, right?
Yeah, those beans without ID are used for inner beans. That's
okay.
Right. So here, the example we have talked about is a performer who performs some activities. In this case, I took these examples, as I told you, from Spring in Action. Here the performer performs juggling activities. So we created an interface that has one method, perform method, that throws an exception. The perform method, there is a class. The perform method will be implemented by the class that implements performer interface. So here the juggler class implements performer interface and it implements perform method. It does nothing, but it just simply prints how many beanbags the juggler is juggling. So by default we have given a value 3, but our aim is to inject this value from configuration file. So we want to define this juggler bean inside the configuration file. So the way to do that is bean ID equal to, give any name that you like and mention the class, the full class path of the class, com dot spring in action dot spring idle dot juggler class. Now here we are not injecting any value for the bean bags. So look at, so this is the configuration file. Defined, this bean ID is defined in a configuration file called springidle.xml. By default, if it is an application context.xml, if the name of the file is application context.xml, the beans get loaded by default. Otherwise, if the name and path of the file is something different, you need to load the application context like this. Application context ctx equal to new class path XML application context, because we are providing the class path of the file here. Now you get application context. Now from the context you get the bean context.getBean by passing the, what is this? What are you passing here? Context.getBean of?
We are passing the reference of the bean.
No, we are not passing the reference. This is a bean ID.
Yeah.
Right? We are passing the ID of the bean. Yeah, reference, but reference you would say when you are injecting that bean into some other bean. So here you are passing the bean ID. Once you pass that, you know that you are going to get a performer bean, because that juggler implements performer. So that is of type performer. So you need to typecast it, otherwise you will get a simple object. So once you get the performer class, you call the perform method, which prints juggling 3 beanbags. Now you want to inject that value into the
so
juggler
can you
class.
go back for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So now next one, what we want to do is we want to inject the value of the beanbags. So for that case, we use an argument called constructor arg, because here we are using the juggler has a empty constructor. This bean always need to have an empty constructor. If there is none, if you are writing another constructor with a parameter argument, you need to put in the empty constructor. So now to inject the value of the beanbags, you need to use the tag constructor arg. The constructor arg element is used to bring additional information to use when constructing a bean. What is this type of injection is called?
Constructor arg injection.
Constructor injection.
Okay.
The other one you did earlier is setter injection. So here if you say constructor arg value equal to 15, the value when you call perform method, now it prints juggling 15 beanbags. Okay. Now injecting object references with constructors. So there is another juggler who would like to sing songs along while doing juggling. Now this poetic juggler extends the juggler class, but also can sing songs. So there is a poem interface. Now let's say this Sonnet 29 bean. There is a bean that implements that interface. Okay, and into the poetic juggler we are injecting the value, how many beanbags, and the reference bean which implements this poem interface, and we are injecting that into the poetic juggler, so that when you call that method perform, he will perform juggling through the juggler class, and the poem.recite, the method will get called from Sonnet 29 class, which has implemented the poem interface. Okay, I haven't shown you here the complete implementation, but the idea here is how to inject object references with constructors, as you have seen earlier, using ref element. That is what I am trying to show you here as an example. Sometimes the only way to instantiate an object is through static factory method, and in that case we can create beans through factory methods using argument factory method equal to get instance. So there are various scopes for the beans: singleton, prototype, request, session, and global session. Singleton scopes the bean definition to a single instance per Spring container. So how many times you request for the bean, only one instance of the bean is available throughout the application life cycle. And prototype, every time you request for that bean, an instance will be created. So that's once per use bean. Whereas request session scopes a bean definition to a HTTP request, and session is scopes a bean definition to a HTTP session. Okay, global session bean is scopes a bean definition to a global HTTP session, but that is valid only when used in a portlet context. And you can define the bean scoping using the attribute scope equal to singleton, scope equal to prototype, like that. And when a bean, you can initialize and destroy beans. You can call certain methods before the bean gets initialized using, when you override that couple of methods, init method and destroy method. Using init method and destroy method, you can call these methods before the bean gets initialized and after the bean, before the bean is ready to be destroyed. So when a bean is instantiated, it may be necessary to perform some initialization. In those cases, you will use this init methods. Okay. So in this case, let's say auditorium is need to be ready. So before the auditorium need to be ready, you are calling an init method turn on lights, and after the performance is done, you want to call the method turn off lights through a destroy method. And how do you inject values into the properties, bean properties, using property element? So here you are injecting song and age using property element. We talked about this referencing other beans using ref element. So the bean properties, the primary method of dependency injection, and the injected value can be another bean also, using property name ref bean equal to. As you were asking before, you see here the ref element is right within the property element. This can be written in shorthand notation also. So this is nothing but a shorthand notation of the one you are seeing in the above example.
Okay.
And this is an inner bean, as we discussed. This will not have an ID.
Right.
The init method runs after all the bean dependencies are loaded. Constructor loads when the bean is first initialized, and when all the bean dependencies are loaded, then the init method gets called.
Right.
And you can inject the values using value tag. In certain cases, you want to inherit the properties from a parent bean because you don't want to redefine all those values. In those cases, you use the element parent. Suppose you don't want to redefine name and age for the child bean, you just inherit the values from the other beans using the tag attribute parent equal to. Okay.
Okay.
And we talked about collections. How to if there are list elements, set, map, props, how to set the values. Till now we have seen how to inject other beans and how to set the values. But when it comes to collection, suppose there is a list object in the class and you want to set those values from the bean. You have to use list tag and ref elements. If the list collection is another set of beans. Otherwise, you can use list of properties. In this case, you are using list. Okay, because the collection element is list is a collection of instruments which are beans. We are using ref bean equal to. If it is a map, you use the tag map, and map will have key value pairs. So entry is an entry element, key and value ref. The difference between value and value ref is value specifies the value of the map entry as a string, whereas value ref specifies the value of the map as a reference to a bean in the string context. So if it is a simple string, you can use value, whereas value ref that specifies the value of the map entry as a reference to a bean in the string context. Same is the case for a key and a key ref. If it is a simple string, use key as a key value. If it is a reference to other bean, use key ref. Value and keys can be reference to other beans also.
Okay.
Props. Property is the element used to inject a value or bean reference into a property of bean class. props is the element used to define collection value of type. If it is a key value pair, you can use props also, and prop is the element used to define the member of props collection. We talked about auto wiring. There are 4 types of wiring here: by name, by type, and constructor and auto detect. By name attempts to match all properties of the auto wired bean with beans that have the same name as the properties. And so if let's see by name. So the way to define by name is auto wire equal to by name. Let's suppose you haven't defined any auto wiring, and in that case exclusively you have to mention property name equal to instrument, ref equal to saxophone. So there is a saxophone bean that you are injecting into the instrument property in the instrument list class. Suppose you make that saxophone bean ID as instrument and you do auto wiring by name. Since the name of the saxophone bean, which is changed now to instrument, matches with the name of the property in the instrument list class, auto wire by name automatically injects that bean into the instrument property. That is auto wiring by name.
Can you repeat?
Yeah. See here, there is no auto wire by name.
Right.
Now, property name equal to instrument, ref equal to saxophone. You are explicitly mentioning inject this saxophone bean into the instrument property, which is in the instrument list class.
Right.
Now, let's suppose that you renamed this saxophone bean, which is somewhere else in the configuration file. I haven't shown you here. Suppose you renamed that bean, saxophone bean ID, change the ID to instrument itself. To match the name, to match that ID with the property name instrument which is in the instrument list. So make it exactly same as the property name which is in this class.
Oh, okay.
So then you can totally remove this and
Right.
just say auto wire by name. So that property name will be matched with the bean name that is somewhere else configured in the Spring configuration.
Okay.
And it will be automatically injected into the class.
Nice.
That is auto wiring by name. Similarly, auto wiring by property, then you have to define auto wire equal to by type. Then the type of the same type of the bean, if it is available in the Spring configuration, then it will be injected. If there are multiple beans that are matching in the configuration, Spring will not make any guess. It will throw an exception. Okay.
Okay.
So the constructor is tries to match up a constructor of the auto wired bean with beans whose types are assignable to the constructor arguments. So that is auto wiring by constructor. So depending upon the arguments of the constructor, if the Spring configuration matches a bean similar to the arguments type of the constructor, those beans will be injected into the constructor. When it comes to auto detect, attempts to apply constructor auto wiring first, and if that doesn't work, then it attempts to inject by type. Okay. So that is about auto wiring. And I have shown you sample application context.xml, which I am going to again demo it now. I'm going to show you how to set up your Spring setup and configuration in Eclipse. Did you try that last week?
Yeah.
You did, and you were able to inject a bean?
Yeah, actually I referred some online content and tried doing it. The Spring part is working fine.
Very good. Good. It's nice. Yeah. Now, if it is a web application, the bootstrapping of the application context is a little different. You don't need to do that application context CTX equal to class path XML context and all those things. In your web.xml, just put this listener and listener class and add this one line, org.springframework context loader listener, and all your beans will get loaded on the startup of the application. So this is what we discussed briefly in our earlier Spring Core framework discussion. Now I'm going to show you for those who haven't done the setup yet, I'm going to show you the where to get the jars and all. So just first go to springsource.org, and here this is a official website to get all the Spring documentation and reference jars. Now here just say get started and look for go to documentation or read the documentation. Here you will be able to see Spring Framework, various modules in the Spring Framework, Spring Security, Spring Web Services, and Spring Integration, Spring Batch. So these are various modules. Right now we are talking about Spring Framework, which is a core framework. Here you will see the current release of the Spring. The current release is 3.1.0, and you will see the reference manual and API. You will be also able to download. Just click download here, and you will get all the jar files, and you will get this one. Setup. Yeah. See this Spring setup. You will get Spring Framework 3.1.0 release. You will get this, and once you get this, just go to dist directory where you will have all the jars. For doing the sample, you don't need all the jars, but because each module jar is independent. If you look here, you might need only core, but go ahead and copy these jars, and don't copy this libd. Copy these jars into. I created a demo for you, Spring demo. So I created a Java project, Spring demo in Java. So do new Java project, do Spring demo, and cancel that. Create a lib directory within that, and once you create the lib directory from the backend, you can just copy those jars. See, I copied all those jars to here. So this is my Spring demo class for running the Spring application. Now apart from that, you also need Commons logging jar. So download that Commons logging 1. whatever version it is, and add that jar also. Okay. Now you are ready to write your first Spring application. So create a XML file within the source at the root of the source. This is the class path. So the XML file here, the source files will be compiled into the class files. So this beans.xml will end up in the class path. So create an XML file here and name it as beans.xml. If you see beans.xml, I have the idea here is I have a instruct courses main file, and I have a couple of other files, Spring course or starts course. So I'm going to ask a question to the main Java file. So what is the training course that's happening right now? Okay. So based on this is the main method. Suppose we have defined all the beans in beans.xml, which I am going to show you a little later. Now I'm saying application context equal to new class path XML application context beans.xml. Now context.getBean my bean. So I'm going to get a type bean type instruct courses. This is an interface. sorry, this is a class, instruct courses. If you look at my bean, that is a class I'm going to get. So I typecasted that to instruct courses. Okay. Now within this instruct courses, I'm injecting for the property TM training master. I'm injecting a bean called Spring course. Okay. And there is another bean called struts course. Right now I'm injecting Spring course. Now when I get that bean and using the bean reference that I got from the configuration file, I'm calling ask question method. Okay, now this ask question method is within this file. What this is doing is, based on the value that is injected into this class reference is an interface, but the implementation is a class, right? Based on the value injected here, this is going to call a training course method, which is either in Spring course or struts course. So now if I inject value as training course, Spring course bean, which method gets called? Guys?
Since it is referring to Spring course, I think the method in the Spring course will get called, right?
Yes, method in the Spring course will get called. So because I'm injecting the bean reference bean to Spring course.
Spring course, yeah.
So now let me run this Java application. So now if you see the messages here, it will say first that it is loading all the beans from the beans.xml. This is loading XML bean definitions from class path resource beans.xml.
Right.
Now it says training Spring. Now let's go to beans.xml and inject training master for struts course as struts course. This training master is an interface, and whereas this struts course, I'll show you that just a minute. This training master interface is a interface which has one method, training course,
Right.
and Spring course implements the training master interface, as well as struts course implements the training master interface. So now let's run this instruct courses. So now it will say training struts. So if you see, what we are doing here is, I'm not instantiating this class. I'm not instantiating the object here. I'm not doing this either Spring course or struts course, right? And you see this, when I do that, it's asking for the dependency. So by eliminating this, what you are doing is you are keeping the classes clean. They are not tightly coupled to each other. So entire configuration is managed. See, if you explicitly do that, you need to import the Spring course class. And if you do a new struts course, now you need to import that struts course class. So by not doing this and following the Spring pattern of providing the references, the classes are clean and there is no tight coupling between the classes. This is and even between the modules. That's the advantage you are getting. Okay.
Okay.
So try to set up this workspace, copy those jars, download those jars from Spring source, try to do at least one example, and you'll have a good understanding of how this entire thing is working. Okay. Now let's talk about the other modules of Spring. So we'll discuss Spring JDBC, Spring Transactions, Spring AOP, and JPA. Before that, let's talk about DAO access pattern. Earlier, while we were discussing struts, we talked about design pattern. Can you tell me what is that? When we were discussing struts 2.0.
Model view controller?
Yes, the MVC design pattern. Right. So this is another design pattern. This is called data access object or DAO pattern. DAO stands for data access object, and DAOs exist to provide a means to read and write to the database. So you have a service object and you need to access the database. If you can also do that directly, the access from the service object, but that won't be clean. So the only layer that needs to talk to database is always data access object layer. So for that, what you will do is you'll create a DAO interface, and there will be DAO implementation classes. So whenever service object needs to access the database, it needs to first get a reference to the DAO classes, and the DAO classes will talk to the database and retrieve the results and pass the results back to the service layer. Okay, so that is called DAO access pattern. And DAO should expose this functionality through an interface by which rest of the application will access them. Now, why are we discussing about this DAO is, when you talk about Spring JDBC, now we are trying to hit the database with the help of Spring. And when we do that, we need to follow certain patterns. Earlier, we talked about hitting the database using core JDBC. If you remember, the way we were doing that is, first you need to get a data source, or you can get the connection object through a driver manager. Remember, I told you two ways to get the connection object. So here I am showing you the example that to get the connection object, use a data source dot get connection. Okay, fine. Now after getting the connection, you have to do a connection dot prepare statement. This SQL insert splitter is a string that is already created, which contains the SQL. Assume that it contains that actual SQL that needs to be run, which is already created somewhere else in the program. Now you got the connection object. Now you have to say connection dot prepare statement. Now you got the statement object. Now within that SQL, there are certain values that need to be binded. The parameter values that needs to be binded. So then you have to say statement dot set string, statement dot set string of 2 comma, statement dot set string of 3 comma. So you are binding the parameters. Then now you are executing that using statement dot execute. After doing this, you are catching that if there are any exceptions, SQL exception object. So, and then finally block and try catch here within the finally, and you have to close the statements. You have to close the connection. So there is a lot of manual work going on here. Rather than focusing on the actual query and the result set, we are doing a lot of other work like opening the connections, preparing the statement, executing the statement, closing the connection, all these things. So the idea of Spring JDBC is developer shouldn't be worried about these things, opening the connection, preparing the statement, executing the statement, all these things. Rather, you should focus on the query and the result set. So the Spring JDBC will take all these activity into a template. So essentially, you access the template. It will do everything for you, and you just need to pass the SQL that need to be executed. So that's the core idea of the Spring JDBC. Got it?
Right.
You don't need to do all these things. Now again, look at this SQL exception and SQL exception object and the comment inside that. This says do something here, but have you ever thought what need to be done here? If it is an exception, usually there is nothing much you can do. So why are you catching this exception?
Just print the error message.
But that doesn't help you to get the application running. So what is the use of it? It just helps you to debug later on. The application has already failed. You can't do much. Right? So
Right.
what Spring will do is, taking that idea, it will provide its own data access hierarchy. And if you see JDBC has exceptions, it has batch update exception, data truncation, SQL exception, and all those things. When it comes to Spring's data access exceptions, these are all, you see a lot of exceptions here, but these are all checked exceptions. So can you tell me what is the difference between a checked exception and unchecked exception? We discussed this when we talked about core Java. Core Java exception handling. Very important question, guys. You need to be prepared. Checked exceptions, you don't need to handle them, but unchecked exceptions need to be handled. Right? So what
Yes,
Spring
sir.
will do, what Spring does is convert all these unchecked exceptions like SQL exceptions into checked exceptions. All these are checked exceptions. You don't need to handle them. But if you want, you can do that. So whenever an exception happens, Spring will find what kind of exception it is, and that will be caught by the Spring framework itself. So you don't need to write that catch blocks. Okay, so that is Spring's data access hierarchy, and the important exception over here is, look here, data access, data access exception, these kind of exceptions. So now that is about the exception block in the entire code of the JDBC. Now let's look into this creation of connection objects and creating the statement objects and all. For that purpose, Spring provides a template. So how do you template? What is templating data access? Spring separates, there are two parts of the data access. One is called fixed part and one is called variable part. Okay. The fixed part is creating the connection, creating the connection object, opening the prepared statement, and executing the prepared statement, closing the connection, closing the prepared statement. Those are all fixed parts. And the variable part is the query and the query parameters. Those are all the variable parts. So what Spring does is it separated these fixed and variable parts into two distinct classes called templates and callbacks. Templates manage the fixed part of the process, whereas your custom data access code is handled in the callbacks. So preparing resources, starting transaction, commit rollback transaction, closing resources, and handling errors are handled by the DAO templates. Whereas executing in the transaction and returning data, these are handled by the DAO callbacks by the Spring. So Now that you know that Spring has templates to do all this, you shouldn't be doing opening the connection of creating the connection object and preparing statement and all those things. So you need to know who does what and how to access the templates. So let's see who does what. Defining connection parameters you have to do. What are the connection parameters? Database URL, port number, host name, service name of the database. That entire thing forms one database URL, as well as database user ID, database password. These connection parameters you have to define. And Spring will open the connection. You define what is the SQL statement. You declare the parameters and provide the parameter values. Spring will prepare and execute the statement. And if there are any results also, when you get result set from the database in the JDBC, you are looping through the result set using iterator. Remember we talked about various types of iterators.
Yeah.
So you don't need to do that. When you get the result set, Spring can automatically map those results to a class. I'll show you how to do that. And when you do that, do the work for each iteration, and rest of the things, process any exception, handling transactions, closing the connections, closing the statement, closing the result set will be entirely done by Spring. So that's the advantage of Spring JDBC. So after learning Spring JDBC, I don't think you want to write any JDBC code. Right? So let's see what are the data access templates that are available before making use one of them. If you are writing, for example, Hibernate 3.x version code, you need to use template class called orm.hibernate3.hibernate template. Okay. Similarly, for IVATIS or let's say simple JDBC connections, you need to use code.simple.simple JDBC template. And if you are using JPA, which you are going to see a little later, which stands for Java Persistent API Entity Managers, you need to use orm.jpa.jpa template class. I'll show you how to use these classes, but these are the various types of template classes that are provided and that need to be used in each scenario. All right. And there is another way to get these things done. Till now we have talked about templating. Now let's also discuss about DAO support class before I actually show you how to make use of both of them. DAO support class is also one way to do all these things, whatever is done by template. Each template also provides convenience methods that simplify data access without the need to create an explicit callback implementation. So if you are using templates, you have to create the variable part, and in the variable part you have to create some callback implementation methods. You see here, I told you there are two parts in the template. One is the fixed part and one is the variable part. Variable part, if you follow this approach, you need to implement the callback methods.
Right.
To avoid that, use the DAO support class that automatically provides some callback methods.
Okay.
So here in this case, you have your DAO class here, and you extend the DAO support class provided by Spring. What it does is internally it will access the data access template, and let's suppose the persistence framework is Hibernate, which talks to the database. If it is Hibernate, what kind of data access template you will use here? So in that case, the DAO support class will be org.hibernate3.support.hibernate DAO support class.
Okay.
So earlier, if you are using template, it is org.hibernate3.hibernate template. Okay. So these are two ways to access database using Spring JDBC. One is using Spring template and the other one is using Spring DAO classes. Okay. Furthermore, on top of the template callback design, Spring provides DAO support classes that are meant to be subclassed by your own DAO classes. So you can just extend that DAO support classes and you are good to go. I will show one example how to set up those. Yes, I'll show you when you come here how to set up the JDBC templates. So first, before doing that, we need to configure a data source. I told you the first step is to configure a data source before either using JDBC template or Spring DAO support classes. Irrespective of whatever you are using, first you need to create a data source. When you are done exercise for for Hibernate, you have connected to the database, MySQL database.
Mm-hmm.
So you must have already done this, one of these ways to create a data source. Let's see that, which one you have done. Spring offers several options for configuring data source beans in our Spring application. Data sources that are defined by a JDBC driver, or data sources that are looked up by JNDA, and data sources that pulls the connections. There are three different types of data sources and the ways to configure them. Let's see the first method, using JNDA data sources. So use this lookup element, JNDA lookup element from Spring's JE namespace, which makes it possible to retrieve any object, including data sources from JNDA, and make it available as a Spring bean. This JNDA is nothing but whenever an application administrator configures the, let's say your application is on WebLogic and your application administrator configures the database connection properties in the WebLogic server. Okay. Now there you will give a virtual name, and that is the name you will look up in your application. Okay. And that name is, let's say the data source name is Spitter DS. DS stands for data source. The way to access from the Java application is use this element JNDA lookup and put it in the configuration, Spring configuration, using JNDA lookup ID. This ID can be anything which you are going to use later to get the connection. And what is the JNDA name? Tell the JNDA name and prefix it using JDBC/. So this is one way to configure data sources using JNDA. The second method is using a pooled data source. Whenever you configure a data source in using JNDA, that is the best method, because your server will be able to pool the connections. We talked about connection pooling while we were talking about discussing Hibernate. For connection pooling, whenever you request for a connection object, a new connection will not be created all the time. If the connection object is already available and is free, it will be picked up from the pool and the connection will be provided to the user. And whenever the statement, running the statement and everything is done, the connection object will be returned to the pool. So because creating the connection is a costly resource and you need to make use of connection pooling whenever possible. That is using JNDA. If that is not possible, let's see using a pooled data source from configuration. Create a bean ID and use this basic data source. Okay.
Okay.
And set these properties. Property name, driver class name. What is the driver class name you are using? And this driver class name varies based upon the driver, based upon the database you are using. If you are connecting to Oracle, it will be different, and if you are connecting to MySQL, it will be different. Now provide the database URL here. And what is the username, password, and how many connections you want initially to be open, and how many max active connections. So you set some properties here. So this is another way to create a data source. So we are discussing now various ways to create a data source. Before I show you how to make use of JDBC template or how to make use of Spring DAO support classes. Okay. Guys, any questions?
No.
Now let's see what are the different properties. Okay. What are the different properties we are setting up while creating the data source? Initial size, the number of connections created when the pool is started, and how many maximum number of connections that you want using max active element. And you can also set up how many maximum number of connections that can be ideal at any time, and how many maximum open prepared statements are allowed or that can be allocated from the statement pool at the same time, and some other properties like what is the max wait time, minimum idle time, and all those things. So the third method to create data source is JDBC driver based data source. Configuring this data source is similar to how we configured using basic data source that you have seen earlier. But in this case, this type of, here you see, driver, you are using R Spring Framework JDBC data store driver manager data source. Okay. This is not intended for production use. Here the connections are not pooled. This is just for your development environment where the connection will be created every time you request for the data source. Okay. You can use it for development though, but this is not how in any production environment that will be configured. Usually it will be done using JNDA. So here you are using Spring Framework data source, driver manager data source. Provide the driver class name, property name, and user name and password, and database URL. So now we got data source, and this is the example I was showing you earlier, where you are doing this these things manually. Now let's see how to do the same set of steps using JDBC template. Spring comes with 3 template classes to choose from. We will discuss about Spring DAO support classes a little later once we complete how to use JDBC templates, which is the core of Spring JDBC. So Spring comes with 3 template classes. One is JDBC template, the other one is named parameter JDBC template, third one is simple JDBC template. The first version, the JDBC template, is the most basic of Spring's JDBC templates. This class provides simple access to a database through JDBC and simple indexed parameter queries. So this doesn't offer you much, but this is the most basic of JDBC templates. The second one is, and this has indexed parameter queries, like similar to the ones like this. You have to provide the index and then set the values. Provide the index and set the values. But the advantage is you don't need to do all these opening the connections and statements and closing the connections and statements. The second one is named parameter JDBC template. I'll show you examples for each one of these. Let's see how does the JDBC template looks like before we talk about named parameter JDBC template. So here JDBC, look at the JDBC template methods. So in your class there is a JDBC template property defined, and the value for this JDBC template will be injected from the Spring configuration file. Okay, and how to do that? See this, we have defined a variable called JDBC template, and there is a setter method called set data source. So once you created the data source in your earlier, in one of the three ways that you have discussed earlier, little before, you will inject the data source into the class, and then you will say this dot JDBC template equal to new JDBC template of data source. So for JDBC template, ultimately you need to give a data source object. So if you see here, you have defined a bean ID equal to data source, class equal to basic data source, and you have given driver class name, URL, password, username and password. This looks familiar, right? Now what you have done here? At this step, what you have done is simply created a data source object, right?
Yeah.
Now here we are using a feature of Spring called scanning, component scanning. Okay, what this does is define the package where annotations are available, and put this element context colon component scan, and what is the base package. So it looks for all the classes and methods within that package. Assume that this JDBC corporate event DAO is in a package called org spring framework.docs.test. When you add this one line of element component context colon component scan within the Spring configuration, Spring scans all the base packages, all the classes within the base package, within this package, all the classes and methods, and finds out which methods are annotated with and for those annotated methods you are injecting the value for the data source using context property placeholder location JDBC.properties. So these values, this one is to, this context property placeholder is to inject values into these values at runtime. You see dollar, flower bracket and flower bracket. So this data source object will be created using this context property placeholder tag, and using this context component scan, the data source will be injected into this class because this class is annotated. Okay. Now once the data source is injected, the JDBC template is set using this dot JDBC template. So the base idea here is first you need to create a data source object and inject that into your class somehow. You can also use ref element also, doesn't matter. You create a bean ID for JDBC corporate event DAO, inject the data source object into your JDBC template. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Then you can use the JDBC template.
Okay.
So now look at the JDBC template methods. It has a method, one of the methods is query for int, and you can pass any simple SQL here. You still need to create the SQL statement by yourself. Spring doesn't do that for you. So you wrote the SQL statement, select count star from table, and query for int will directly return the integer value of the count star. Okay. Query for int will return integer, whereas query for object will return a object, and for that you need to see you have a query here, select last name where ID equal to, and to set the value you have to create an object because you are creating here a long object. This is not a primitive. So you have to create new object of this one, and you tell what is the return type using string.class. So that will return a query for object will return a string object. So that is how you query for a string. Now I told you once you get the result set, you can directly map instead of iterating through the result set, you can directly map the contents of the result set into by iterating processing that result set. You can directly map the results. You don't need to iterate through the result set. So within one statement, JDBC template dot query for object, pass the SQL, set the value. Here what we are doing here is new row mapper actor. This is called a callback method. You open the flower bracket, close the flower bracket. This entire part is called callback. Callback method means once the query execution is done and the results are retrieved, this method gets called. And this is within the query for object. Okay, and you close the new row mapper. So what you are doing here is within that row mapper there is a method that is implemented, map row, that accepts result set and the row number from the result set that is returned by the database. Now you are taking the result set, getting the string, first name, and setting it to the actor class. That's why you are saying row mapper of actor.
Okay.
Okay, so this is called callback method. You are not looping through the result set, but directly within one step you do this everything. See, now when you are using JDBC template, where are those getting the connection object, creating the prepared statement, handling the exceptions, closing the connections, closing the statements? Do you see any of those code?
No.
No, that is all taken care by the JDBC template. The template class provides all those features, which is already taken care when you pass the data source object.
Okay.
And the other one is if there is list of actors, querying and populating number of domain objects. See this, select first name, last name. Here you will get lot of results query from this table, first name, last name from T_actor. So even those can be mapped directly using the callback methods. Here it returns, because this query returns lot of values, right? A lot of records.
Yeah.
Select first name, last name from T_actor. So the return value will be list of actors,
List
not
of actors.
not a single actor. Earlier you see it's a single actor object. Here you are returning list of actors. So this is about JDBC template and how to set up the data source and inject the data source into the JDBC template before you use that. Now let's talk about named parameter JDBC template. Go back to our definition. This JDBC template class enables you to perform queries where values are bound to named parameters in SQL rather than indexed parameters. So here you understand what is indexed parameters, right? Here you have to say when you say indexed parameters as, here you didn't get a chance to do that, but indexed parameters is 1, 2, like the index based on the index of the, you have to be very careful when setting the indexed parameters, because changing the values of the indexed parameters will result in a query error. When you use named parameter JDBC template, what you do is, I'll show you an example here. Okay, look at this. So the query for named parameter JDBC template looks like this. The SQL insert splitter query, insert into splitter username, password, full name, plus values look at this, username, colon password, colon full name. So there is no more indexes like 1, 2 and 3. Now you can put the params using params.put username, password, full name. You can change the order of these params, doesn't matter. Right, now you can put this, set this value for the username here and move the full name here. Doesn't matter where you are setting that value. It's no more based on the index. It's based on the actual name of the parameter. So that is named parameters. These are called named parameters.
And sir, you can also have like colon, instead of colon username, you can have colon user1 and it will still work, right?
Colon user1, then you have to put the params as params.put user1.
Yeah, user1, right. Yeah, but it will still work, right?
It will still work. So it doesn't matter whether it is whether it is at index 1 or index 2 or index 3. The values here can be in any order, and you can set the values here in any order. That's very convenient. Very less chance of any issues with the named parameter index, named parameter.
So basically that the name after the colon is kind of a reference for that.
Yes, instead of question mark, it's no more an index. That's the reference you'll use here to set the value for that. And these three can be in any order, and the setting of the values can be in any order. No more worry about what is 1, what is 2, and what is 3. Okay. Now, let's see how to set up named parameter JDBC template in the configuration. This is JDBC template. In Spring 2.5, the named parameter features, named parameter JDBC template were merged into simple JDBC template. So now these features are now moved to the next one called simple JDBC template, which you are going to look into. But let's look into named parameter JDBC template also. So because these features are available in the simple JDBC template, provides very easy access and fewer methods that are only needed for data access. We don't need to use JDBC template at all. So when it comes to a choice between JDBC template and simple JDBC template, go for simple JDBC template, which you are going to look into a little later. So we'll first look into named parameter JDBC template and how to set it up. Okay. So this is simple JDBC template. Okay. Let's see how to set up simple JDBC template first. So create a bean, and the class of the bean here in this case will be simple JDBC template instead of a JDBC template. Okay. Now we created this bean, and earlier injected a data source for the JDBC template. Similar to that, now again inject for the simple JDBC template, inject a constructor arg ref equal to data source. The actual data source being referred by the data source property can be any implementation of javax.sql.data source. This is how we create a simple JDBC template. And the implementation class, I told you in the MySQL, when I was discussing about Hibernate, I opened one class which implements javax.sql.data source. That will be the, as long as the data source implements that, you can inject that into the simple JDBC template. Okay. Now, in the JDBC splitter DAO, instead of declaring the variable as JDBC template, you are declaring here as private simple JDBC template, and the setter method for the JDBC template, which accepts a JDBC template. Now we can wire the JDBC template bean into our DAO and use it to access the database. For example, suppose that the splitter DAO bean is written to use like this. You can then wire JDBC template property of JDBC Splitter DO directly like this. You can also do this. You can also inject the JDBC template directly into this simple that class. Okay.
All right.
Now, okay, this is another example where we are using simplified data access using simple JDBC template. When coming to named parameters, as we discussed, indexed parameters is we have to take notice of the order of parameters in the query and list the values in the correct order and passing them to the update method. Whereas named parameters lets us give each parameter in the SQL an explicit name and to refer to the parameter by that name and binding values. So here the indexing and the order is not important. As long as you know the name of the parameter, we can bind it. This is the example we discussed earlier for named parameters. Let me show you how to configure that and what are the methods of Spring. Yeah. See this named parameter JDBC template. When you inject that named parameter JDBC template, here you have a SQL count star from this table where first name equal to colon first name. So if you have multiple values that need to be set like this, what you are doing earlier is you are creating a map object and you are putting a keyword similar to the named parameter. So then you are creating putting them into the map manually. But if you have like hundreds of these, you don't need to do this manually, right? Username, password, full name, first name, last name, all those things. Instead, Spring provides you a class called map SQL parameter source. Directly, you don't need to create a map and then put the key and the values into that. So directly use this map SQL parameter source class and pass the key and the values. Okay, once you are done with that, use the JDBC template and use query for int and pass the SQL and the named parameters as arguments. That's it. So no more opening the connections statements, closing the connections and all those things. So these are three types of JDBC templates. The first one is simple JDBC template. Second one is named parameters JDBC template, and other one is simple JDBC template. Simple JDBC template is same as the JDBC template, but just that it provides basic methods for data access, which are frequently used on a daily basis. And named parameter JDBC template, when you are using that, remember to use map SQL parameter source, which provides convenient methods to pass the key value pairs. Okay.
Okay.
And here we get this collection start. We can also create a map instead of if you don't want to use map SQL parameter source. There is a method in the collections class. Collections is a utility class. Remember when we discussed about collections, we talked about the difference between collection versus collections. Collection is an interface, whereas collections is a utility class. And that utility class has a method singleton map, for which you pass the key value pairs. So instead of using map SQL parameter source, you can use collection.singleton map to create a map and pass that as an argument to the query for int. For named parameter JDBC template, pass the SQL and the named parameters. In this case, the map is created using collections.singleton map method. So one nice feature related to the named parameter JDBC template is SQL parameter source interface, which is nothing but the implementation class is map SQL parameter source. And SQL parameter source is a source of named value pairs to a named parameter JDBC template. So the map SQL parameter source class, which is an implementation for SQL parameter source, is a very simple implementation that is likely an adapter around a java.util.map. So what is this doing? This map SQL parameter source is nothing but a class that is written on top of java.util.map interface, where the keys are the parameter names and the values are the parameter values. So that's like a convenient class that you can use to create the map that can be passed to a named parameter JDBC template. So now you have seen the various ways to get access to the template and avoid all those manual code that you are doing in JDBC using core JDBC. Now let's see the other feature of Spring that helps you to do the same thing, which is called which is Spring DAO support classes. So for each of our applications JDBC backend DAO classes, we'll need to be sure to add a simple JDBC template property and a setter method. Let's suppose you have many classes that access many DAO classes that accesses the database. So if all of those are trying to get a connection to the database, for each one of them you need to inject the JDBC template property or a simple JDBC template property, right? Here you have seen example for only one class, but usually a DAO layer will have multiple classes that will access the database. And for each one of them, you need to inject the JDBC template property, which is difficult to do. So what can be done is, instead of that, you can have one class that will have the JDBC template, and all your DAO classes can extend that one class, which is a Spring DAO support class, and still get access to the JDBC template. So in that case, you don't need to be worried about whether you injected the simple JDBC template bean into all the classes. So if you have multiple DAOs, that's a lot of repeated code. Is that clear, guys?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you have multiple classes, you'll end up injecting Spring JDBC template, simple JDBC template into all of those classes to access for allowing each DAO class to access the database. You don't want to do that. So instead,
Right.
Spring created one utility convenient class called support classes, Spring DAO support class, and instead all your DAO classes can extend that single class and still get access to the JDBC template. So that's why I showed you in earlier example that Spring DAO support class inherently uses the JDBC template to get access to the persistence framework, which can be Hibernate or IBATIS or can be anything. Now, Spring DAO support classes comes again in 3 flavors, similar to the JDBC templates. The base is JDBC DAO support class. The second one is simple JDBC DAO support class. Third one is named parameter JDBC DAO support. One to mirror each of Spring's JDBC template. Similar to the JDBC template, here we have 3 classes. To start using these classes, you just need to extend simple JDBC DAO support class. And in this case, you don't need to inject anything into the, you don't need to create a property for JDBC template within this class JDBC splitter DO. Instead, what you can do is you directly wire a data source directly into the data source property that JDBC splitter DO inherits from. Okay, so there is, you can directly set this property inside this class data source, which will be set into the class that you extended. So you extended here a simple JDBC DO support class, and there is no property called DO data source inside your splitter DO class. So this property will be set into the superclass which is simple JDBC DO support, and using that this class gets access to the JDBC template. Once you do that, when JDBC splitter DO has its data source property configured, it will internally create a simple JDBC template instance for you. It does it automatically. We don't need to do anything. You don't need to create a variable and a setter methods and all those things. Once you extend that and inject the data source property, your splitter DO class in this case will internally create a simple JDBC template instance for you. This eliminates the need to explicitly declare a simple JDBC template bean in Spring. So you don't need to anymore create a simple JDBC template bean. Earlier you were creating that simple JDBC template bean in the Spring configuration. So now you don't even need to do that. When you extend that class, just you need to create a data source using one of the three methods that we discussed earlier. Inject that data source, extend the simple JDBC DO support class, and inject the data source. That's it. No more. You don't need to worry about JDBC templates also. I explained the JDBC templates because that's the core of Spring JDBC.
Okay.
Most of the time, use the DO support class, create the data source, inject that. Now you know how to get a data source connection to the database. Till now, in your Spring examples, whoever has configured the workspace, you injected the values into the beans. Now, create the data source, connect to the MySQL by tomorrow's class, connect to the MySQL and use one of the support classes. Inject the data source, connect to the database.
Okay.
Write a test class and see whether you are able to connect to the database or not. Try that.
Okay.
So now we're going to talk about Spring JPA features, and we still have Spring transactions, and then Spring AOP. Let's try to complete Spring JPA, and if it extends, we will schedule another class for Spring transactions and Spring AOP, and we will also discuss how to integrate Hibernate and Spring.
All right.
Spring JPA, you must have heard of EJB2 and EJB3 versions.
Yeah.
So between those versions, this JPA, Java Persistence API, is created. So this is another way to access the database. Like Spring JDBC. So JPA allows you to access the database using an entity manager. Okay. So JPA based applications use an implementation of Entity Manager Factory to get an instance of Entity Manager. Okay. So JPA is nothing but like annotations. If I look at see this.
Yeah.
It looks like your core, Pojo, but with a lot of annotations, and
Right.
that makes it JPA. JPA is on top of these frameworks to access to the database. And there are two kinds of, this JPA specification defines two kinds of entity managers. One is application managed entity manager and the other one is container managed entity manager. What is the difference is, in application managed entity manager, these are created when an application directly requests one from an entity manager factory. So again, here we are asking for the entity manager to be created from the entity manager factory in the application. With application entity managers, the application is responsible for opening and closing entity managers and involving the entity manager in transactions. This type of entity manager is most appropriate for use in standalone applications that don't run in a Java Enterprise container. Whereas if your application is already running in a container, you don't want to do this opening and closing of entity managers and involving the entity manager in transaction. In container managed applications, entity managers are created and managed by the Java EE container. The application doesn't interact with the entity manager factory at all. So your application will never interact with the entity manager directly. Instead, entity managers are obtained directly through injection or from JNDA. So entity manager instance will get created and it will be injected into your class. The container is responsible for configuring the entity manager factories. And this type of entity manager is most appropriate for use when we want some control over JPA configuration beyond what is specified in persistence.xml. This persistence.xml is a special kind of file, XML file, that need to be configured in JPA. I'll show you what needs to be configured in the persistence.xml. So in container managed applications, container will handle creation of the entity managers. Each flavor of entity manager factory is produced by corresponding Spring factory bean. So for entity manager factory bean to be produced, we need a Spring factory bean, and there are two Spring factory beans for that. One is the local entity manager factory bean that produces application manager entity factory bean. The other Spring factory bean is local container entity manager factory bean, which produces container managed entity manager factory. So one is to create an application managed entity manager factory, the other one is to create container managed entity manager factory. Let's look at one of them. So how to configure application managed JPA? For configuring application managed JPA, application managed entity manager factories derive most of the configuration information from a configuration file called persistence.xml. So when you are using application managed entity factories, you have to first configure the information in a file called persistence.xml, and this file must appear in the meta-inf directory within the class path. When you are working on servlets and JSPs, when you are seeing the web structure, there is a folder called meta-inf.
Yeah.
So this persistence.xml has to be in there. The structure of the persistence.xml is, look at this. Whom did you lose? Okay, the structure of this. Yeah, let's look at this. That's all right. Create a persistence unit, give it a name, and declare all the classes within the application that will have access to this persistent unit, and define the properties to connect to the database. That's it. Once you have configured that into persistence.xml, whenever and you want application managed factory bean, create a bean Spring entity manager factory bean and create that has a property. This is a predefined property within this local entity manager factory bean. That predefined name for that is persistence unit name, and for that you need to give a reference of the persistence unit that you created earlier. So you created a persistence unit in persistence.xml file in meta-inf, and the name for that you have given is Peter PU. So in the Spring configuration, to get a application managed entity manager factory, you define this Spring bean, local entity manager factory bean, and provide value for the persistence unit name that you defined earlier. You got it?
Okay.
Yeah. Now let's see how to configure container manager JPA. The following bean declaration shows how to configure container manager JPA. So earlier you were using local entity manager factory bean, whereas here you should use local container entity manager factory bean. Right. And it has a property named data source. Provide the data source, and here you don't need to define persistence.xml. Okay. So just inject the data source into that.
Okay.
Because this is the data source is managed by the container again. And the second property is vendor adapter vendor specific property. So this is how to get a container managed entity factory bean. Pulling an entity manager factory bean from JNDI, if you are deploying your Spring application in some application servers, an entity manager factory bean may have already been created for you. So similar to what I have explained earlier, whenever a data source is being configured in an application server, the data source on the startup of the server, the connection pools are created and they are ready to use. And the only way to retrieve those connections is using JNDI. Similarly, if the entity manager factory beans are already created in the application servers, then you need to get them using JNDI, using JNDI lookup, provide the JNDI name and provide an ID name. So use this ID name, you'll get the entity manager factories from JNDI. Look at an example for JPA based DAO. So here, if you look at here, there is a entity manager, and you are not instantiating anything. You are getting this value is injected through Spring, and you see various annotations here. You are saying this class is transactional using the annotation called transactional, and what is the persistence context, and inject the entity manager here, and various getter and setter methods along with the business methods. These are all business functionality methods. Use the entity manager. So if you are adding a splitter, you are using entity manager dot persist. In Hibernate, how do you save an object?
The table.
Yeah, into the table, but how do you save the object? What is the method you will use to save the object?
Okay.
There are a couple of methods, right? It can be save or update.
Okay, yeah, right.
Remember now, but here in entity manager, this is the method name is persist.
Okay.
Okay. Again, in Hibernate, how do you load an object from database into the application? What are the methods? There are two methods. One is load and the other one is get.
Okay.
Now here the method name would be find. So that's the difference. That's it. The entity manager is the JPA specification is on top of those other frameworks. The method names varies, and the way to create the entity manager factory understand what are the Spring classes that need to be configured to create an entity manager factory. Once you understand that, once you are able to inject that into the Pojo, this is an entity class. And once you are able to inject that into this entity class, use the JPA methods to store and retrieve the objects. To store the object, you use persist method, and to load the object, you use find method. All right. So that is pretty much about JPA. To enable entity manager injection in Spring, we'll need to configure persistence, and this is let me tell you. To enable, there are few other steps in configuration. There are few steps to be done in configuration to enable entity manager injection in Spring. You need to also configure persistence annotation bean post processor. I know the method names are long, but that is how it is. So you also need to configure bean class equal to org Spring Framework ORM JPA support persistence annotation bean post processor. Okay. So that is to enable entity manager injection in Spring. Here JPA splitter DO is annotated with multiple annotations. Transactional indicates that the persistence methods in this DO will be involved in a transactional context. So these methods are within a transaction. You understand what is a transaction, right? We talked about withdrawing your money from an ATM.
Right.
Right. That's an example of transaction. Anyhow, we are going to discuss that again when we talk about Spring JDBC transactions. That is coming shortly. So this is that is how JPA works. You need to understand the configuration and the annotations within that, and what are the methods to store the objects using JPA. So here you are using, instead of Spring JDBC or Hibernate, you are using a different data access strategy. This is JPA. Again, there is something else called JDO also, Java Data Objects. So that is something different. But these are all persistence frameworks again. So you can use either Hibernate, JPA, Spring JDBC. Ultimately, the aim is to centralize creating the data sources and be able to store the data into the database, right? Okay, so what we'll do is we'll discuss Spring transactions and Spring AOP in tomorrow's session, and we'll also talk about integrating Spring and Hibernate.
Okay.
That's going to complete the Spring discussion.
Sir, tomorrow at what time we are having the lecture?